in biodegradable plastic. Good evening and welcome. This is the meeting of the, October 11th meeting of the Newtown Township Board of Supervisors. The board was in executive session prior to this meeting to discuss 4 legal matters. So I apologize for our late start. Doesn't happen often, but sometimes it does. So with that, I'll ask Mr. Nease to call our roll.
Nawn.
Present.
Mr. Partridge.
Here.
Ms. Roberts Lycat.
Here.
Mr. Russo.
Here.
Mr. Altieri.
Here.
Your solicitor, engineer, and manager are here.
Thank you, Mr. Nease. For our moment of silence tonight, let me say Happy Columbus Day, and let's keep in our thoughts, our prayers, all folks, all of our indigenous residents of our country, everybody that comes from another country, all our different race, creeds, colors, and things like that. Let's all keep that in our prayers this evening and think about that. All right. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have before us this evening's agenda. I'll entertain a motion for approval or consideration of any changes or deletions, additions.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made by Supervisor Altieri, seconded by Supervisor Roberts Lycat to approve our agenda as written. Any further questions or discussions on the agenda? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. I trust everyone's had the chance to review the minutes from our September 27th meeting. Accordingly, I'll entertain a motion for approval as written or consideration of any changes, additions, deletions.
Make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made by Supervisor Altieri, seconded by Supervisor Roberts Lycat to approve the minutes as written. Any further questions or discussions on the motion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Tonight, we have a great resolution here. This is Resolution 2021-31, honoring Gabriele Denunzio. And I'm going to ask Mr. Altieri to read that resolution.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Resolution number 2021-31, recognizing Gabriel Denunzio's service to Newtown Township. Whereas Newtown Township recognizes the many talents of Gabe Denunzio, master designer. And whereas Gabe was born in Italy and was surrounded by the clothing industry as a child, with a father who was a master tailor and a mother a seamstress. And whereas before immigrating to Philadelphia at the age of 11, Gabe and his siblings raised silkworms to sell to local craftsmen who used them to spin silk. And whereas Gabe owned and operated D&B Custom Clothier, serving residents in Newtown Square since 1966. And whereas Gabe's talent of combining craftsmanship and style made him the clothier of choice for a discerning clientele that reached well beyond our local area to numerous celebrities. And whereas Gabe was a pillar in the Newtown Township community by supporting the police, the beatification efforts, and local businesses in need, believing in the ones he loved and making everyone he knew feel special. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Board of Supervisors of Newtown Township would like to honor Gabriel Denunzio with and extend Newtown Township's gratitude for his commitment and service to the Newtown Township community. Adopted this 11th day of October 2020.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made by Supervisor Altieri, seconded by Supervisor Russo to approve Resolution 2021-31, honoring Gabe Denunzio. Any further questions? Let us vote first. And then you can clap. Any further questions or discussions on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Now you may clap.
Carol, you want to come up and take a photo, or do you just want it? It's up to you. Completely up to you. And I'm sure there's other people who want to say some words about him. Is that what you're all here for? Yeah, Paul. Come on up.
Who's in charge of me?
Is that?
Is that kind of throw the gavel at you? Who's in charge of me?
Well, Seligson, 4727 Mill Hollow Lane, but tonight I come to you as the president of the Business Association here in Newtown Square. And I want to say a couple of words about Gabe. I met Gabe over the Christmas tree in the middle of St. Albans Circle. And I met him through a complaint. He called me to tell me how annoyed he was that the lights were so feeble and kind of dingy and they weren't really good looking. And he said, look, I have some clients that are willing to put some money down, but we're going to get some better lights, right? Right. I said, and we met several times and we discussed how the lights would look. And ultimately we got these really bright white lights, but they've been changed since then because the fire department thinks it should have different colored lights. So, but the whole idea of getting St. Albans Circle spiffed up and moving forward, a lot of it came out of Gabe's brain and out of his creative juices. On a personal level, it was great to know Gabe. What you're seeing right now has all been tailored and amended by him. His gift was more than just a regular tailor. For the Business Association, he made Newtown Square a destination city, and it really was an honor to have. And we have a few other shops that are highly specialized, and they've been here a number of years, that really make Newtown Square quite special. And D&B Tailors and Cleaners was one of them. And it's a pleasure to have them in our community of businesses. And it was a real privilege to know Gabe. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
I've had these words prepared for about 6 months. It'll only take about 2 minutes. Because I'm a senior citizen, it's difficult for me to remember everything, so I've written them down. Okay. And those of you who've known Gabe, a lot of these points hopefully will mean something to you. Gabe had thousands of friendships, customers, and acquaintances that spanned over 6 decades. I am proud and humbled to be one that called him a true friend. But that's how Gabe made everyone feel special. If you met him in his store or restaurant, you were treated as if you were the most important person in the world. By the way, when he saw you in a restaurant at another table, he always asked the waiter to give him your check. No fanfare, just a quiet recognition to you that you were special. At work, Gabe was king. He greeted all with a great smile and a big open arm hug. When children came in, Gabe was down on one knee to welcome them and be sure that they knew candies and cookies were there for the taking. Gabe was a man of many passions. The greatest was his enduring love for Carolyn, with whom he traveled the world, dined at the finest restaurants, and built a beautiful life together. As a master craftsman, he dressed some of the best known and wealthiest over generations. The placard on the inside of the jacket proudly displayed the name of the owner and the artist by whom it was created, Gabriel Denunzio. His passion for Villanova basketball was obvious to all those who entered his store, where a championship ball and picture with Gabe and the Villanova team was on prominent display. Gabe was a man of great courage, conviction, ultimate kindness, and motivation. Always striving to do better and explore new opportunities, he drove himself and others to that elusive pinnacle of perfection. On that seldom occasion of a tag mix-up on dry cleaning, he would say, "I need to have a meeting with the girls." To all of us, Gabe was quite the imposing figure. He stood out in any crowd, the beautiful white hair of which he was immensely proud, the classic Italian shoes, which when he found just the right pair, he purchased 6 of them, the trademark glasses, which he bought in 4 different colors so they would complement each color suit. As you stood next to him, you felt like the before picture and he was the after picture in Esquire magazine. If you look closely at this meticulously dressed man and at the perfectly coordinated cravat, what caught your eye was the scissor tie pin that he wore daily. Gabe was not a jeans and t-shirt kind of guy. Leaving Italy at age 12, he arrived in the new land with a new language and culture. He grew through a troubled childhood to become a leader and innovator in his profession and a beloved member of his community. In the true Italian tradition, Gabe loved his espresso and put his hand to cooking meals at home and was very proud and surprised at the results. We are all better for knowing this fine man. He showed us the way to strive toward perfection.
Thank you. Anyone else? Oh, sir, what was your name?
Very candid.
Thank you, Jerry. All right, if there's no other comments, we'll move on. You folks are welcome to stay all night for the meeting, but we won't take it offense if you decide you want to leave too. That's okay. So appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
All right, moving on the agenda, item number 8.1, we're going to have a report on the 2020 audit by Chris Herr from Maillie LLP. Maybe not.
No, he's here. He's on the Zoom.
Oh, well then go ahead.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Thanks for having me. Happy to be able to be here to present the 2020 financials. Guess the first question, can everybody hear me okay?
Chris, we're not hearing you yet.
You're on mute.
What is going on?
Have you tested it? Did it work before?
Can you hear me better now? No.
Oh, do you have that mic on, that setup with the oh, sorry.
Not sure what happened, but can you hear me now?
Chris, can you say something now, please?
Something? Can you hear me?
Hold on here.
Shall we come back to him?
Try it again now, Chris.
Can you hear me now?
Can you speak again?
He did.
I can speak again. Can you hear me?
We now hear you. Whoops.
Got me? You still have me?
Still have you.
Perfect. All right. Thanks. Appreciate being able to be here to speak tonight. Again, my name is Chris Herr. I'm a partner with Maillie LLP. We're the independent auditors for your 2020 audit. Very happy to be here tonight to present a summary of that audit and those results, and just a few of the highlights from the financial statements. So I'll just dive right into this little 5-page presentation I have. So the first page, summary of findings and results. The auditor's report expresses an unmodified opinion. That's also known as a clean opinion. That is the opinion you want to have on your financial statements. Essentially means it's statements are free of any material misstatement. They're in accordance with GAAP, that's generally accepted accounting principles. They're compliant with all GASB, governmental accounting standard board pronouncements, and there's no scope limitations. We come into the audit with a very lengthy list of everything we want to see, from bank statements to W-2s to individual invoices, everything in between, and we received everything we needed to conduct the audit. Non-compliance and findings, there was no instances of any non-compliance or findings that we noted as part of our audit. Had there been any, we would have been required to issue you a separate letter outlining those conditions, and there was no such letter for this year. Onto the next page, just want to point out a few estimates that come out of your financial statements. Your net pension liability. This is based on estimates provided by your actuary. Your police pension plan at the end of 2020 is overfunded by about 1.9, just shy of $2 million. That's an increase from being $556,000 overfunded at the end of the prior year. The non-uniform pension plan is overfunded by $654,000. It's an increase of from about $315,000 overfunded last year. And the big takeaway with both of those is we were a little concerned this time last year during the pandemic about what returns were going to look like on investments. You know, June, July of 2020, there was not a very rosy outlook, but at the end of the year, both plans had about 15% return on investment. So your police plan, you had about $2 million of investment income on about $12 million of assets, and non-uniform plan, about $500,000 of investment income on about $3.2 million of assets. So again, 15% rate of return on the year, very good for that plan and pretty typical of what we've seen in other municipalities. The minimum municipal obligation, you know, I just like to put this in here for information purposes. This is how much you are required to contribute to both plans for the year. Again, this is something that comes from the actuaries. It's about $500,000 for your police plan, about $150,000 for your non-uniform plan. The net OPEB liability, this is post-retirement medical benefits. At the end of the year, about $4.8 million of a liability for that plan, up about $300,000 from the year before, closer to $400,000. And just a point, that is a non-funded plan. So unlike the pension plans where you're required to make contributions and there's a pool of assets sitting in a trust, there is no such pool or requirement for your OPEB liability. And then finally, capital assets. Your total cost of capital assets at the end of the year was about $42 million. That's up $5 million from last year. And the big reason for that increase is you guys put high $4 million of investment into your road program. So that was a giant increase in your cost. Depreciation for the year, about $1.3 million. That represents about 3% of cost. At the end of the year, accumulated depreciation on your assets is right around $15 million. So when we compare that accumulated depreciation to your cost, you're about 35% of the way through the life of the assets, which is very good, especially in comparison to a lot of other municipalities out there. So the next couple slides, just some sort of dollar highlights from the audit. This first graph here, this is the township revenues, and the top three revenues for the township being taxes, licenses, and permits and contributions. That top orange line is 2019. The blue line is 2020. So the first line, tax, is obviously the biggest revenue for the township. 2019 total tax revenues was about $7.6 million. That actually decreased a little bit in 2020 down to $7.5 million. Really two factors there. Transfer tax revenue was down about $360,000. However, that was offset by about $260,000 in the real estate taxes, resulting largely from the 3% millage increase. So that made up some of the ground lost by transfer taxes, but not quite all of it, which is why we see that $100,000 loss. Licenses and permits, a big drop there. 2019 was around $4 million. That decreased down to about $2.2 million. The big driver there was 2019 was sort of an ordinary year. You had a few $1 million of permit revenues coming in from Ellis Preserve. So without that, we kind of saw 2020 return to a more normal state of revenues. Contributions, another pretty big swing. 2019 was about $370,000 in 2020. That increased to about 1.7. Big increase there is kind of going back to that road program and that big increase in capital assets. You are going to be getting, I think, about $1.6 million of reimbursement from the municipal authority for some of that road work. So that is what you're seeing in that jump in the contribution revenue line. Down below that, the expenditures, really your three big groups there. Highest group in 2020, highway and streets. You can see a big jump in that blue line. Again, massive investment in the road program in 2020. So that went from about $1.7 million last year to just shy of $6 million of expenditures in 2020. Public safety was virtually flat. That's your largely your police expenses, 4.8 million in 2018, 4.9 million in 2020, about 2% increase. And then your general government line dropped a little bit. It was about 1.26 million in 2019, dropped to about 1.1 million in 2020. You know, I saw this in a fair number of municipalities in 2020, and what I really kind of chalk it up to is the pandemic. You know, there was less part-time workers, utility bills were lower, IT costs seemed to drop a little bit. You know, some people were working less hours, 4-day work week. So that's pretty consistent, that little drop in general government. And I would expect that to start to creep back up in 2021 and 2022 as we hopefully get back to normal. The next page, long-term debt, 11.3 million at the end of December of 19. It's up about 14.2 million December 31st, 2020 balance. There was about $3.6 million in new debt in 2020 for capital improvements, the road program. Come back to that road program. So there was about 3.6 million in new debt in 2020, and there was about $700,000 of principal payment. So that's the $2.9 million increase we're seeing there in long-term debt. And that last graph is the fund balance. The bottom blue row, that's your general fund. And going from 2018 into 2019, that went up about $2 million. Again, I would kind of chalk that up to that extraordinary year with permits and that large amount coming in for Ellis Preserve. And then it stayed pretty level into this year. And then that top line, that's all your other governmental funds. So all your capital funds, your highway aid funds, that has been going up a little bit from year to year. We're at about $10 million at the end of this year. $9 million of that is already earmarked, set aside for capital improvements. The remainder is for highway aid, street lights, fire hydrants. It is all sort of earmarked for specific purposes. That's why it's not in the general fund. But I would also expect that number to start to creep down as you continue to do the capital projects that you're planning on. The last page is just something I like to put in. Some boards like to see it, some don't. What I like to try to do is give the boards an idea of some of the stuff that we're kind of doing behind the scenes in the audit. We rely on a lot of data analytics, especially in the area of expenses, which is a harder area because there's just thousands of transactions there. One of the things we do is Benford's Law, and that's what this graph is. This is actually the thousands of transactions of the township for 2020, reduced to graph form. This is based on the first digit of each transaction. And what this law basically says is that in any randomly occurring population of numbers, the first digit is going to be 1 about 30% of the time, going to be 2 about 23% of the time, and that just drops off. So whether that's $1, $10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, as long as that first digit's a 1, it's going to be in that 1 column. And what we do is we drop everything into the graph, and if anything jumps out of conformity, that's where we'll aim our audit test. Now, this one's pretty easy to see, so I put it in there. We'll also do it with 2 digits. So the first 2 digits being 11 or 12, 13, 14, and so on. And that's where we'll tend to get some of the pops. You know, we'll get the orange and the red lines, columns popping up. We did have some for your township. We do go in and look at all that. It tended to be recurring payroll, which tends to be the same amount every couple weeks, or benefit costs, which again are the same amounts every couple weeks. So that's one of the things we do in the background. We also do pivot table analysis, laying out your activity on a monthly basis to look for any unusual spikes or values in activity. Because we've been your auditor for a few years, we can also compare that on a year-to-year basis. So what did January 2020 look like compared to January 2019 and January 2018 in one specific expense? And again, if it's out of sort, we'll go in and look at that. We'll do predictive analytics again, because we have a history with you guys. We'll look at the last 2 or 3 years of activity, project where we think this year should be, and then compare it to actual results. And again, if things are out of sorts, that's where we'll aim our activity. We look at all the W-2s, we look at all the journal entries, we look at your vendors. So those are all things that we're doing in the background of the audit. And the trick there is we're really just trying not to get stale. It's not about looking at the same vendors every year or the same expense accounts every year. It's really about letting the data sort of take us wherever we need to go from an audit perspective, guys. So, I mean, that's it. That's all I got. So it was a good audit. Very happy with the support we got from the township. Again, we got everything we needed to be able to conduct the audit. So yeah, it was a good experience, good report, clean report again. So with that, I'd be happy to field any questions if you have any.
Steve, Rich, well done. I mean, this is a testament to your fine financial management that we are in this position where we can get these types of letters from our auditor. So appreciate everything you do, because you're keeping us on the financial straight and narrow. So thank you. Anybody have any questions for our auditor, Mr. Herr? All right, Chris. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate your efforts, and we're glad we could make your job easy.
I appreciate it. They're not all like this, so I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, take care, everyone. Have a good night.
We don't need to take any vote or anything on this. No?
You should, whoops. We didn't put it, you take the volume down just a bit, echoing in my ear. Thank you. We probably should have you vote on it, but because we didn't put it on the agenda, we'll put it on for next meeting.
Okay.
Just for you to approve your audit. It's a standard. I don't think we've done that yet. Is that correct?
Okay.
Yeah, so we will do that. That's a standard action that you normally take, accepting your audit.
Okay. All right. Moving on to item 8.2, we're going to have a landscape presentation from the Ellis Preserve. I believe Mr. Forde is there, along with his planner and his attorney in the background there. So
good evening. Nice to see you. We were asked to come tonight to give some updated plans on the landscaping for phase 2 at Ellis. Over the past month or so, Lisa's been working on those plans, and we want to show you some different view sheds from 252 Winding Way, Route 3. Answer any questions that you have.
okay, we'll let you go through the presentation, I think, first, and then I know the board has
Sure.
questions. So.
Absolutely.
Good evening, Lisa Thomas, President of Black & Thomas Kanzak. Happy to be here. It's been a great project to work on. Is there any way you can make the slides a little bigger? Like maybe so they could fill the hole? Thank you so much. So just want to let you remind you of where we were, where we are right now, and talk about what you'll be seeing in the future as landscaping gets installed. So this is just a shot to remind you where everybody is, where we're at. At the bottom of the screen is Westchester Pike. To the upper right is Route 252, just so you can sort of locate yourself. I'm going to start, you can see the retail along Westchester Pike, and moving into the site, there's the hotel and office building, and then the townhouses, and then the multifamily building. I'm going to start, first couple of slides are going to be along Westchester Pike, and then I'm going to pop over to Route 252 to look at where the apartment building is going in, and then we'll drive sort of up Winding Way to show you some graphics that we've been working on that shows the visualization of what will get planted. For the next slide. So this is a graphic that we previously showed you. It's a view of the retail area as it faces Westchester Pike. We wanted to show you what you're going to see from various areas off of Westchester Pike. So this is looking west. This is at the corner of Winding Way. So you can, the plants are about 5 years out in size from what gets installed. And we put some people in so you could have a sense of scale. So this is the corner. You can look down towards on to the right. You can see the proposed office building, And then to the far left is Westchester and the sidewalk. Again, here's as if you're driving in the lane heading west, and you're looking to the sidewalk, so you can see the sidewalk, landscaping, fencing, and street trees. And then this is across the street, across Westchester Pike, so that you can see what you'll see then and see what the landscaping looks like and the scale of the buildings. Next. And then this is headed more towards the corner of the road. Now we're down onto Route 252, and we're looking at the apartments, and you can see the white fence to give you a sense of scale. There's an existing tree we're showing up against the white fence. If you look towards the to the left, towards the utility poles, right now there's two very terrible looking trees right there. So we did not put them in here. We wanted you to see what it would look like without them. They're have been sort of mangled by utility folks when they were pruning. So the big tree is existing and will remain. You can see the evergreen trees. You can see glimpses of the apartment. You can also see people walking on the trail that's right along the road there. This is the corner of Winding Way in Westchester Pike. Give you an idea, again, the fence to give you scale. You can see the apartment building on the corner. And then beyond the landscaping is a detention basin to remind you of what's going on right there. And we're looking up Winding Way. And here we are adjacent to we're on Winding Way, adjacent to the apartments, and further up are the townhouses, and you can see the office building at the top. This is the entry road into the townhouse development. And we're across the street, like we would be up against the landscaping across the street here, looking at the entry. You can see the landscaping at the entry, the street trees, etc. And then this is the entry into the retail, and the office building is on your right-hand side.
Can I ask you a question? I know we said we were going to let you finish, but going back to that last slide. So what is this vantage point from? A Winding Way. I see it right at the bottom. Never mind. Perfect. Yeah.
So that's where we are with showing a visualization of our landscape plans and what you can expect to see. A couple things I'd like to bring up is, and remind everybody, is that on our plans, we showed a landscape compliance chart. And for the shade trees, we were required to, on the site, to plant and show 255 shade trees based on the requirements of the design guidelines and the ordinance. And we're showing an additional 118 trees on the site. For the evergreen trees, we're required to plant 45. We have 253 additional evergreen trees that are being planted on the site. And then in terms of the shrubs, based on the code and the design guidelines, we're required to plant 661 shrubs, and we're planting over 2,300 shrubs on the site. So we've taken great care with this plan, and we've been working on it for quite some time with you all. And I'm really pleased to be able to show you and give you a glimpse of what it's going to look like. That's it.
All right, I have a couple questions, then I'm going to let the rest of the board ask their questions. Some of your renderings along Westchester Pike don't show any utility poles. Is that just left out on purpose, or are you going to put the power underground?
Well, we're showing the landscaping in that area, so we didn't purposely omit them. They just didn't land in there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's a great
Unfortunate.
question.
I was over here putting it underground.
Well, thank you for raising that.
The three-rail white fence is not shown on Westchester Pike in some of those. Are you not wrapping the three-rail white fence around Westchester Pike?
No,
I mean, there was a three-rail white fence
Right.
there. That's not wondering why it's
Right.
not going back up there.
So once you can
It was the
go,
third slide. I mean,
there's a fence, a black fence.
yeah, there's a black wire fence.
Yeah,
you're
that's a
showing.
My number 3.
It's there, three-rail
Okay.
fence.
So in this area here, there's a retaining wall.
Right.
It sits down, and there's going to need to be a fence across the top of the retaining wall.
The parking is depressed.
Correct. And then as you turn the corner here and you start heading west, it starts coming up to grade across here. We
We never really talked about it. I think part of the problem was, not the problem, is this other fence. The fences would look rather odd. It's not a very wide space.
One's a code requirement.
Oh, I know that. I mean, and I appreciate the fact you're not gonna be able to see the cars that are in the parking lot because they're gonna be at a lower
Pressed.
level. That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
But I know we had white fence along Westchester Pike and,
And Winding Way.
well, I think they're showing it along Winding Way.
I
Right.
don't
So,
see it. Do you? I don't
Yeah,
see
it's
it.
We are.
From a personal preference, I think that.
Yeah, well, that's what I was thinking. I mean, that's a big,
Yeah.
that's important to
Oh, right
Newtown
there, I
Township.
see.
That is one of our things, I guess, you know.
Actually, I think you're right, Tina, is that the white fence, if you go to, which slide is it?
It's
The one-
on 252. It shows on the 252
Right, and then it
side,
sort of
but it
stops
show
there,
on
it
the
doesn't
Winding
go
Way.
up. Yeah, and then
But
it doesn't
show
go,
on the Winding
yeah,
Way
I
side.
agree. It needs to go all the way up. I'm glad you guys caught
It
that.
should be continuous around the
Yep.
site. I think that's a big part of.
No,
what
I
we're
like that.
expecting.
Yeah, thank you for picking that up.
My last question has to do with the word "the village" on the roof of the building. You showed it both in the aerial view and then you showed it on the side views. You're not painting the roof. Okay. All right. Just wanted to make sure. I mean, that was,
Next time I'll erase it. Thank you for,
you know, it just, I don't think anybody would have gone through that. So,
yeah, I see it.
all right, they were my minor issues. I don't know who wants to go first here.
I just have, you mentioned that you're showing them at 5 years
Mhm.
of growth. So what does that look like now? Because I see the trees are just a little bit taller than, I guess, almost a 6-foot person.
So they
in
go
5
in,
years?
yeah, they go in at, I believe at 8 feet. And then we added a foot a year, basically, more or less.
And do we have native plantings that are EAC and that we've been working with? They're
Everything's
encouraging
Been approved
native
by the township.
plantings and things like
Although
that, because I
everything's been
know,
approved.
I know that we have got,
Talking over each other.
I'm
Hang on.
sorry,
Go ahead. Hang on. Respond when she's done talking. Thank you. Go ahead.
I was just asking about the native plants.
They've been approved by the
Okay, it's just that I know that around the stormwater basins that you've got at the entrances at AmeriHealth and then again at the townhouses, off of 252, you couldn't put trees because of, it's pretty tight. But we've been working closely with the EAC and other to help mitigate stormwater management, and some of the ideas are these native plants and to soften those I understand the issues that you have with the trees, right? You can't fit the trees, but if we can do shrubs or something to soften these basins so that they don't look so basiny, I guess. I mean, the ones on 252, the one at those 2 housing developments, they really need to be softened.
Please, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but because we're recording, if you could please step to the.
We have basins, I'm particularly looking around at the corner of 252 and Winding Way. And
Yeah, they look like they're just trees though. And I know once everything, because John and I talked about it, they're pretty, the width of it. So if you run into an issue that you can't put these trees, we're asking that you look at doing some other, in addition to these trees, I know you're doing a lot of planting. If there's a way to incorporate some native plants into this,
sure,
we would
absolutely,
appreciate that.
absolutely.
Because
Yeah.
you also run into some issues here on the parking lot when you come up Winding Way and 252 are what I'm focused on because, that's what we see as residents. Most of us live off of that area. And I know that, there are people on Westchester Pike as well, but there's also, that was very always, and along Westchester Pike as well, but personally, how's that? I'm focused on Winding Way 252, if you can. So we don't see it. We don't want to see, I mean, we're gonna see the apartment building, there's no way around it. It's big, it's tall, I knew that when I didn't agree with it. So, and I appreciate that you're trying to hide it, but if we can, again, as we come up Winding Way, you've got this other parking lot. It gets really tight
So
along Winding Way.
this is a good slide to look at it in terms of,
Yeah, that's kind of like what you showed us with the AmeriHealth, and you still see AmeriHealth, but I appreciate that. You know, if there's a way to berm it and build these berms and then the trees grow over it, you know, then they're built on these trees, you know, the trees are built on or planted in the berm so that they've got a start to be higher, kind of like what Mike had talked about with, what's the name of the development? They wanted to take that hill down and you negotiated with the developer, Muirwood. You know, so they've
so
got,
Tina, there is a berm on here, it goes slightly up and the
Okay.
trees are on it and then it goes down.
for the
So,
stormwater
yep,
management.
for the scene that you see, it does actually go up and then it goes down into the basin. So we are working with that topography.
I think what Supervisor Roberts like that is saying is that we know you have an approved landscaping plan and, you know, we know that it met the requirements in the ordinance at the time. Subsequent to that, I think our Environmental Advisory Committee or Shade Commission has got a little bit more savvy. So before you get out and start buying all this plethora of plant material, maybe you just work with the board a little bit more, work with these organizations directly a little bit more, just to make sure that there isn't some new thinking of, not saying more quantity, just changing out certain things. If there's a more native species that might be better, then maybe we have that flexibility for you to be able to work with us at least to see what we can do with that.
Thank you.
Okay. The arborist should be familiar. He's the one who's, or they're the one who are driving some of this native plant type of thing. So yeah, I think that would be great if you take some of their comments and see if there's some flexibility too. If we have to change out what we may have approved with some different type of plant material, just to give us that more of that native feel. I think that's all we're looking for.
Great.
A learning curve, so thank you.
Anything else?
No, I think I'm done.
Who's next?
I will go next. So thank you all for being here. Obviously, the last time we were here was a little heated Zoom call, so I'm happy 10 minutes in, we're not having that yet. But I guess the one question I have is for what's going on with the median strips? My understanding is that we were going to be having plantings along the median strips, and I don't see anything in.
You're talking about Westchester Pike?
And Winding Way and all
Winding
that.
Way, I see them, Leonard. Trees.
They're already there though.
Yes. Literary, yes.
You just go to the microphone.
John,
Westchester Pike, we do have a landscape plan. There was a meeting last week with township staff. I think there's an agreement on the plan itself, and I believe work is going to commence next week. I think that is the idea.
I do believe the discussion at the meeting said that it would more likely be the middle of November when they planted, because they're thinking it's too hot right now, too
Okay.
warm right now. I shouldn't say hot, that was a bad term, but the arborist said that he did not believe it was ideal time to plant right now because of the weather. And they put it at middle of November.
So our arborist is saying to go to the middle of.
Our arborist suggested that they hold off on planting because, and there's also some coordination that will be needed with PennDOT, because in order to do the planting, they have to have a lane closed in both directions, at least temporarily, to get that all taken care of. So George Sharitz was going to be reaching out to PennDOT.
But with 12 lanes, they shouldn't have an issue closing 2 on each side or 1 on each side. Where on the which sections of those medians are we doing? Is it everything that has been redone?
Yes.
Grass? Can we get a copy of that plan just so we can see it as well?
I believe, yeah, it's been prepared by Stewart,
Mhm.
Patrick Stewart.
Perfect. And then in terms of the landscape plan that we're talking about tonight with the site, when are we expected to see some of that start going in? Understanding it's a active construction zone, but is there any areas that are ready for planting, or is this something that's going to be like what's the timeline for that?
So that's part of our discussion on Wednesday with Steve and Eileen, John, Lisa, and the site contractors. Still a lot of work along 252 and Winding Way that we just want to be, we don't want to plan anything that we're going to be ripping out in 2 years. So we're going to look for opportunities to put landscaping in this year. And then, you know, as not a really good plan, but the basin out there gets converted from a sediment basin to a permanent basin. There's a lot of work and stabilization that goes into that post-construction. And we just want to be thoughtful, think about ways we're going to get in there and do that work without, at this point, 2 years out or longer, damaging those trees. We have a trail coming in along, that runs along 252 back there that site work hasn't started yet. So planning stuff in that area is going to be really difficult. So the answer is we're going to look for opportunities on Wednesday with staff.
The safe answer is probably, would you say it's probably nothing this fall?
How about we get
We
back
wait
to
till
you?
Wednesday?
Let's
Wait
get
till
back
Wednesday.
to you
That's
with
fair.
a report after that meeting.
That's fair.
Maybe a report of the next
Yeah,
meeting.
yeah, I wanted to make sure the arborist was out there for that meeting.
Yeah.
And so we have him coming out, and that's the real goal, is we can talk through what makes sense, what can be planted, what we can protect during the construction process to make sure that it survives.
Got it. That's fair. Lisa, kind of jumping off of what Supervisor Roberts Lake said, I know that you indicated in your presentation that these are the renderings that we see here are 5 years out. So, and I think that you said the trees would be planted at 8 feet. Is that correct? So what would the other shrubs and other, I mean, how small, just so I can conceptualize this.
So most of the shrubs go in at 2 feet to 2.5 feet.
Okay.
And the evergreen trees, as I said, are 8 to 10 feet. And then we have our trees are 2 to 2.5 inch caliper, which would get you 15-ish feet. And then some of the flowering trees are 10 to 12 feet.
Got it. And then what about the islands inside? Do you have any renderings of what they look like, or are they just going to be, what are they, like, if I'm standing in the parking lot, that first slide where you're looking at Westchester Pike and looking down, like, is there any view of what it looks like inside that parking lot? Or is it kind of consistent with what we
We
have?
really just worked on the public areas, and the planting islands are all required and planted in accordance with our design guidelines that the townships have.
Okay, so similar to what we already see over like where the Chipotle is essentially? Is that fair to say? Okay, perfect. I don't have anything else on the landscape, but can I ask other questions about the plan? Okay. And this might not be a question that you can answer, John, and I respect that if you can't, but do you have any information you can share on when you think the retail part will start being developed?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So at this point, we have 65% of the retail under LOI right now. So what we're lining up is a retail, hotel, and conference center start April 1, 2022. We are also in discussions with a full building user for the office building. And they've requested a lease from us. So lining those things up this spring, we'll probably be starting all of that, or will be starting all of that.
Starting that in April of 2022.
Correct.
Do you have, and again, if you can't answer this is completely
Sure.
fine. Are you able to start sharing who we have for the retail? You don't have to. If you can't, that's fine. I respect.
I can have that conversation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want you to divulge it. I mean, that's you don't want, that's fine. Like I said, I completely understand that. It's just that obviously one thing that we get all the time, and I think that you guys are in the same boat, is we're constantly told this is gonna be upscale shopping. I think that a lot of the residents are upset, including myself, of what we see. Like we have a FedEx, an empty pet value. And I've had this conversation with you before. Wanted to say it again is, so if we can get that suburban square feel that we're looking for, which I know
I
that you
think the
guys
board
are.
will be very happy
Yeah.
when I tell you who's coming.
All right.
I think it's a different. I have two folks on the board here who know probably more than me about retail, so I don't want to offend you guys and say anything, but apparel is out. The town center is going to be heavy on restaurants, heavy on food. I think we got some fantastic tenants lined up that I'm hoping to share with you very, very soon.
Got it. All right. I guess the last question would be the Westchester Pike second phase of that. When do you think that'll start again?
So we just, our plans are done and approved by, the design is approved by PennDOT. We just got construction easements from Federal Realty. We got Dunwoody's easement, our house easement, and we have one last easement left, and that is SAP. And that's located in front of SAP's property. We're doing some grading in there. There's we're working with PennDOT now. There's a pole there. There's a direct feed of electric from this pole. The pole actually has to move 6 inches. Okay.
Lucky you.
And it's extremely cost prohibitive to move with this electric feeds. So TPD has a redesign in front of Fran Haney at PennDOT right now to kind of do a little bit of a notch around this pole.
Might be easier to move the pole, John.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Might be easier to move the pole, John.
So, might be. But in any case, we're going to have that resolved in the short term. And our goal is to start those road improvements in the spring also. They have to be done before the retail center opens. So they have to start in the spring.
Phase 2 is from where to where, John?
So phase 2 is,
Just for-
from Charles, just about where AmeriHealth is, expanding the rest of the way 3 lanes out to Boot Road. And then to the east, it's from the shopping center driveway, call it, to the east all the way down to Bryn Mawr Avenue.
Newtown Square Shopping Center.
Newtown Square Shopping Center. So it's about, it's mostly widening. There's, everything's done within the right of way. There's a total of, on the west side, there's 4 or 5 electric telephone poles that need to move, that are going to be moving back. But, our biggest problem with the improvements is the stormwater system that's in place out there. It's corrugated metal pipe going back to the 1960s. So as we've been tying in inlets, we've been replacing sections of pipe that there's just nothing to tie into. And it's, just the infrastructure is just in terrible condition out there. So that's what really slowed, a couple of things slowed us down in the last phase.
Too, right?
So no, Pico decides to upgrade their gas system right in the middle of our widening but anyway, we're set to go as soon as we can start in March.
So John, you didn't show it tonight, but are you still planning on having a similar setup interior to the center, sort of like King of Prussia?
Yeah, with that, we didn't, I don't know why we just did, we were kind
That's
of,
kind of one of the most important things.
Yeah,
for people.
absolutely.
This is all great, but
Yeah.
people want to understand, like,
Yeah.
that this is going to come and it's going to have that feel, because that's the question people ask me. And I said, well, that's what I'm told, but I haven't seen.
yeah,
But not as dense as King.
No. What I'm saying is, the area like he had on the original drawings from a few years ago.
He's talking about,
The
the-
outside.
you're talking about the promenade that extends.
Yeah,
to the
yeah, yeah.
property.
You sit out there. you have-
Yeah, this area, yeah,
Right, it's kinda
absolutely,
not-
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I can see something's there, but like, you know what I'm saying, that would be good to bring it when you come back.
So we're working with, you know, we've programmed in there a stage, we have fire pits, we're already talking to some of our restaurants about having festivals out there. Pop-up beer gardens, wine festivals, you know, other kinds of festivals that, you know, that, it's not all alcohol focused. But, you know, it just really making that space active. And I think, you know, with the number of restaurants that we have here, with the outdoor seating, I mean, it all bleeds into that open space.
You're gonna start on that portion of the project in April.
Yes, yes.
Some of these restaurants will actually start construction.
Well, I'm sorry?
In April, some of these restaurants will start construction.
Oh, yeah, for
And
sure.
how, 12 months, less than 12 months?
So the schedule is start in April, will be done fourth quarter of 2022, open first quarter 2023.
Like
Yeah,
10 months?
yeah. I mean, they're pretty simple buildings as far as construction goes. You know, the hotel will be running concurrent to that, and then hopefully I can, you know, the office building was a great surprise for us. You know, for this tenant to come along and want to be here, and it's still the same type of construction, wood timber office building, first one in the market. So, you know, hopefully I'll be back to the board shortly with, you know, disclosure of who that tenant is.
How many square feet again is that?
100,000 feet,
And it would be a single tenant?
one tenant, correct.
How long will the road improvements be? Spring to, what do you think?
So the road improvements, road improvements start in April. You know, really, we need to get done by October. It's not a lot of work.
It's about half what you did last
I was
time.
about to ask that,
It
the
is,
last one what that
yeah.
was.
As long as other folks aren't in our way out there as far as other utility companies.
And if you need to get it done before you're projecting first quarter 2023 restaurant openings and retail openings,
Need to get
that
that
road work needs to be done
It
in
has to be
place.
done,
And you
correct?
can't pay beyond Thanksgiving, for instance, so you got to get it done
Yeah.
by the fall of 2022.
I would mention, you know, also that there's a connection of sidewalk that they're completing
Yes.
that I think is a big win for our community in regards to, you know, kind of where the Uno pizza area, where that sidewalk ends and where the corner is of the Goddard
Between
School.
Hickory and Ellis along Westchester
Yeah.
Pike on the opposite side of their street,
Yeah.
they're going to be putting in that sidewalk.
Yeah, so you know, just so that the board's aware that I think that's a huge win in our connectivity.
So it's off-site, it's
It's,
off of their site.
it's off of their site, but it's an
Off-site.
improvement for our community.
It's that last unconnected piece of sidewalk,
Yes,
essentially along Westchester Pike on that side of this.
yeah, all the way down through to where the O'Reilly is.
Right.
So I think that's a really big win.
And then there's sidewalk along Winding Way, right?
Correct.
252
Yep.
Westchester Pike.
Yep, all the way down. There'll be sidewalk on both sides.
Just one other thing, John, I saw that Rockwell is advertising the townhouses.
Yes.
Their rendering doesn't show any front porches.
So, yeah, I was made aware of that, and my conversations with Rockwell, they had to be consistent with the March 2020 renderings that were shown here. And it's their obligation to come in here and make sure that they're compliant. And, you know, we got a file from them. There's different variations of porches that were
Mhm.
on the 2020. Some of them are stoops, some of them are porches.
This doesn't look anything like what we were expecting.
I'm passing that message along to them that they need
Thank
to
you.
be compliant with that, with those set of
And
renderings.
that
that
is
were
the
shown.
board's expectation.
And that was my representation to them. It's in our agreement of sale with them. And it's
'Cause
something,
that's very important for us.
we spent a lot of time on that.
Yes.
And we were very upfront that it has to be this way. So
Appreciate that.
The last thing I'm going to say is, when it comes to the road improvements, when you do that Westchester Pike expansion, and again, I know that I've made it pretty clear to people that we can't have stationary structures in our medians, so the trees coming down one way or the other. But now that we're doing the expansion, you just ask your team, I know this sounds ridiculous, but I think it just adds insult to injury if everyone has a heightened awareness of the trees that have been coming down on this site and then across the township, not to leave them all piled up in the median. When they come, just take them out. That sounds ridiculous, but it doesn't look good. And then if there's anything that your company can do in terms of getting this information out there to people, I think it would be extremely beneficial to you all. And I've said that to you a couple of times before, John. A lot of the frustration that a lot of the residents I think have here is that they don't know what's going on. I don't think it's necessarily this township's responsibility to do the PR for Equus. I know you and I have had that conversation. I don't know how you guys can figure out a way to do that, but I think it would be extremely beneficial for you
no, you're
guys.
right.
Yeah, because
You're right.
can
that's just,
we get this presentation on the township website, or do we already have it there?
I mean, we've attached it to the agenda this evening. So it's there. We can put it up on.
I'm wondering if we need a separate link or whatever you want to call it that says Ellis Preserve, and whatever information John can give us, we can at least put there. I agree with Leonard. It's not really our job to do that per se, but if we had a spot there that they wouldn't have to go through agendas, that they could just find everything.
Yep.
You know, the plans, but the renderings, things like that people can see and understand.
We will put whatever John gives us up, and we'll create a special Ellis Preserve page on the website.
the only thing though is if you do that, be prepared to do it for every other developer. That's why I was saying it should be really them doing it.
I think we do like,
You have
a unique special.
We have a website,
They have a
and
website.
I need to talk to we're extremely busy, and we lose sight of these things, and I'm glad you brought it up, because we really do need to do a better job, and I haven't, and I got busy in other parts of the world, but I'm going to talk to our marketing folks, and try to get some social media companies involved in what we're doing now moving forward and getting the word out. I mean, we did it 10, 12 years ago when we were in here doing it. Technology is much better than then, and we can do it again. So I'll make a promise that we're going to do that.
Yeah, because I mean, and I've said this to people, I mean, I don't like this plan per se at all, especially with the apartments, but the product you guys do produce is nice. I can't take that away from it. I mean, that's just the truth. Again, I don't like this plan necessarily, but I think that it's important for people to have that information. Because what happens with anything is that there's an information void, and then everything kind of just spews out of that. But it also would be beneficial to you all, because I'm sure as you've seen it, John, because I've sent it to you. People are mocking the name, right? What else preserve? What are they preserving? Well, let them know what they're preserving. Let them see it. You can, what's the old saying? You can take a horse to water, you can't make them drink it.
Yep.
And again, I don't think necessarily it's the township's responsibility to do that.
John, one more thing in closing, I guess. We understand how difficult this is for you guys and things like that. Understand how difficult for us to deal with the folks, and nobody has any patience. You know that. I don't have to tell you that.
Yep.
I mean, as quickly as you can get this done. I mean, I know you're working Saturdays because I hear it from my bathroom window at 7 a.m. You got the trucks moving and stuff like that across the street. That's fine. Maybe you should work Sundays too. Whatever we can do to get this done. Certainly the dirt pile of concrete is there asking questions, and we all understand it's an ongoing construction project. You're doing everything you can. One thing that occurred to me was you're going to be bringing all this tree material in. And probably most of this tree material is sitting at a nursery somewhere waiting to be planted. Well, maybe you could bring it all in. I guess it's all coming in balled or potted or something like that. Maybe you could bring it all in and just line Westchester Pike with it so that no one sees the dirt piles going on as a temporary storage area for your landscaping. That way you got some trees up along there, and even if they're temporary, sitting there in pots or balls or whatever, you throw tops on them just like they do at the nursery. And maybe that'll block everyone's view of the rocks and the dirt pile and the pipes and all the inlet boxes sitting out there. Just something to soften the view as we get this done. I mean, the quicker you can get that promenade done, create that space that we've been promising everybody, the better for all of us.
I think you'll see over the next couple of months, a lot of things change. That, well, let me start with, and I know it's an ongoing issue with the mud on 252, Winding Way, and Charles Ellis. And, you know, we have 2 street sweepers a day going out there. We need a third. Like, yeah, and we are constantly beating our contractors. I drive the site every day. I see the mud, I'm screaming. We need to do a better job. We just need to do a better job. And, you know, Stantec has been all over us also on this. And, you know, we've instituted a lot of things out there to try to mitigate, but I think a couple things are going to be happening over the next couple of months. We're getting the paving done around the apartment building in through the townhouses. So the tracking of mud out, and then I can get 252 entrance by the pump station, get that closed down, okay, and just access off a route or off a Winding Way. The concrete pile. Obviously, we started digging, we found it out there. No idea where it came from. But we're going to be bringing in the crusher at the end of this month. They're still pulling slabs out. There were slabs where they were digging out the garage for the office building. That's where we found what you see today. But then we had a stockpile of topsoil next to it, and it was under the stockpile of topsoil. So we're getting it all out. We're bringing the crusher on. That'll be gone by the end of November. The paving will happen, and we're going to see a lot of this be mitigated over the course. A lot of the stuff you see up front, that's starting to move its way in the back. So, you know, we could talk about your suggestion, getting the trees. I don't know what trees we can get right now and which ones we can't get right now. Supply chain has been.
Landscaper, I don't know anything about, I've seen that before where we take the tree material, we line the
Or
site.
maybe I
so that-
can get a fence up, or I can get something with some. So,
Get a fence
Well,
up with all
okay.
these renderings
Yeah,
on
with
it.
the renderings on it, that's
Take the
what I'm
rendering,
saying.
here's what it's gonna look like.
Yeah, that might be the easiest fix.
Yeah.
Just to mitigate. soften it a little bit, that's all.
Understood.
Any other questions? John, thank you very much for
Right,
coming.
thanks for your time.
Appreciate it. Greg, you did a lot. Thanks. Don't kill him. Yeah. right, you said- All right, next on the agenda, item 8.3, we have a presentation from Mr. Lafiata regarding our revenue budget projections. Again, remind the audience that even though there isn't any here, that we are not taking comments tonight on the budget. We're simply doing a presentation. We will be having hearings on the budget, of course, in due time.
Don't test me. All right, so to date, we've had our personnel expenditure, our capital expenditure, our operating expenditures. Now it's time to move on to the revenues.
Well, just can't spend money without bringing some revenue, can we?
So starting out with fund balance, last year our budget incorporated about $670,000 in the use of fund balance. This was primarily used to pay the double debt service payment that we've been talking about for the road program. At this point in the 2022 budget process, we're not suggesting using any fund balance. Once the revenues and expenditures are more concrete within the next couple of weeks, we can make a better recommendation of what fund balance, if any, to be used in the 2022 budget. So moving on to real estate taxes. This is about 55% of the township's revenue each year. Things like your annual real estate taxes, interim taxes, delinquent taxes are found in this category. Overall, the proposed 2022 budget exceeds 2021 by about $122,000. There are a few reasons for this, but the primary reason is the AmeriHealth building. The AmeriHealth building was just assessed for $133 million, which would generate about $222,000 in additional real estate tax revenue. AmeriHealth still has the opportunity to appeal. So for this reason, we're not putting the whole $220,000 in. We're using about 65% of it, which is about $145,000. In addition, the old Ave apartments, not sure what they're called at the moment, was reassessed for about $17 million more than last year. This generates about $30,000 more in real estate tax revenue as well. With real estate tax revenue being up, on the contrary, interim taxes are actually way down. This time last year, we usually have interim taxes of about $55,000 or $60,000. We currently only have about $4,500 in real estate interim taxes. This is due to the county being behind ever since the reassessment. The county has been falling behind on their interim taxes. It's not just a Newtown thing, it's a countywide issue. I've reached out to other municipalities. So for that reason, we felt it was necessary to actually back our interim tax collections back next year until the county shows some improvement on getting the interim billings out. So overall, about $122,000 in real estate tax increase. Your next is the other taxes, or also known as your 511 taxes. These include your real estate transfers and your LST. They make up about 15 to 18% of the revenue in any given year. This year, we received a large transfer from the AmeriHealth building. And from what I'm hearing, we're going to receive another large real estate transfer tax shortly. For this reason, and just judging by the way the amount of homes and what the homes are going for, we anticipate that we would collect more in real estate transfer tax next year. So we make a suggestion of increasing this budget line item by about $85,000, $85,500. Moving on to business license, the largest contribution to business license is our cable franchise fees. In 2021, we budgeted about $360,000. We believe that we're going to collect $360,000. You'll see a small decrease here of about $6,000. And this is just from our rental license revenues. We don't believe we're going to meet our budget this year, so we suggest taking it down about $6,000. But overall, the main contributor is cable franchise fees, and we think we're going to hit our mark there.
If I can, before you go on, Rich.
Sure.
One of the things that we think we may want to take a look at is that structure on the rental license. You know, when we originally set this out, we did it kind of with an anticipation of, you know, where we thought we were going to be. And we really tried to work with the rental units in town to set up a structure that they were in agreement with, is probably the best way to say it. Looking back at it now, you know, one of the things that you all had asked for was, you know, is this, you know, when we hired Zach to come in and be our rental inspector, we were looking at trying to necessarily try to cover our costs there. I would argue that we're probably not doing that with just the rental license piece like we had kind of hoped for. So I think one of the conversations that we might need to have and come back to you and make a recommendation if the board's willing is kind of restructuring that so it comes closer to covering what his costs are. And if that's what the board wants, right now we're covering it through other fees and through taxes. So just something I think we need to examine.
I think we would welcome or consider that. So,
Okay.
yes.
So the next category, you're going to find fines and forfeits. We're suggesting approximately about a $10,000 decrease for this. Many of these revenues, such as fire alarms and court fees, are down. We're thinking this has to do with the pandemic. The courts are backed up, so we're not seeing any of the revenue, as well as people are home, so they're either canceling or not setting their alarms off as much. So we suggest a small decrease of $10,000 in 2022. Interest, all I have to say about interest is the second that I don't think it can get any lower, I get an email saying that our interest rate is getting lowered. We're going to look into some other avenues of capturing some interest revenue in 2022, such as CDs. things along those lines, but the checking account interest just isn't doing it. So we suggest lowering it about $20,000. Brenton Royalties, this is a small increase of $750 just to meet what align more with what our projections are. This is just the rental of this office space as well as Drexel Lodge. State grants, as you can see, the projected number is well over the budget number. This represents our recycling grant. I was actually working with George before this meeting to try to figure out what's going on with this, but this grant is notoriously hard to predict over the years. They changed their formulas on how they construct it. The state sometimes doesn't send them out at all. Then they'll give you double the revenue next year. So although you can see that we collected 42,000 this year, we're going to make a recommendation to keep the budget the same until we get somebody on the state that can give us a concrete number, because like I said, there's been years that we go without this revenue and they just send the revenue twice. So George and I are in the works of figuring out how to get this number concrete, as we believe there's some money to be added in this line item. This is your state and federal. This is your pension MMOs, your foreign fire relief. So we always just budget what we received the previous year, because that's probably the best indicator of the money we're going to get. Other financing sources, this is the payments from the municipal authority as well as the school district for the municipal authority's bookkeeping and public works services, as well as the SRO for the school district. You'll see there's a small decrease. This has nothing to do with the municipal authority payment or the SRO payment from the school district. What it has to do with is insurance refunds. Each year we don't budget insurance refunds, because in a perfect world, we wouldn't have any claims to be having revenue come in for it. So as claims come in, we do budget adjustments throughout the year, but overall, nothing's changed for the SRO as well as the municipal authority. Payment in lieu of taxes, we get 3 individuals each year that pay it. We've budgeted $13,500. For whatever reason, we got $13,900 this year. So we would make the suggestion of bringing it up $500 to match our projections.
Who are those 3?
Oh, I knew it. I knew you were going to be the one to ask me that.
Suburban, yeah,
A
it's
Suburban, Episcopal, and
The other swimming pools.
St. Albans.
St. Annie's.
I knew it. I looked it up before.
Yeah,
this.
get back to us.
All right.
And with
That's the
amount
$400.
And what they're being charged.
the high, we get 10,000 from Episcopal. That's the largest one.
And what's that based on?
And that was the agreement when the land development plan was done. They contribute 10,000.
Flat rate?
A flat,
Yes.
a flat amount. And that goes to help offset our cost of fire. I mean, it's very specific what it's for in that way, for fire protection.
But it doesn't cover the police that.
Doesn't cover,
That
All the
patrol.
traffic that they have problems with over there in the morning.
No, it's a very low amount,
How many acres is that?
given the
property?
size of the property.
Yeah.
how many acres is that property? Oh,
220 acres.
I don't know if it's quite that big, but it's probably close.
Close to that,
So
right?
say it's 200 acres, $10,000. It's like 2 cents an acre.
There are residences.
Okay. You'll get us that other list, the other one.
Yes, I'll get you the third one for the next meeting.
Thanks, Rich.
So the next category is going to be charges for service. Charges for service, so there's a slight decrease of $2,000. We saw a decrease in subdivision and land development fees. We're just making the adjustment of what we're projecting versus our 2022 budget, which is about a $2,000 decrease. Safety, permits and license. This is our permit revenue. This is the third biggest category. It makes up about 15% of the township's revenue in any given year. As you can see, from the 2021 budget to the 2022 proposed, there's not a lot of difference. But if you look at our projection, we're about $8.1 million, which is well over our proposed budget. This has to do with the large permits from the apartments that came in. They account for about $750,000 of it. So if you back the 750 out of the projection for 2021, we're much more in line with what we're proposing to be budgeted in 2022. We'll obviously do our due diligence and work with some of the big developers and figure out if there's any large permits or anything coming in. Judging by the presentation you just heard, there might be some revenue to have in this category as well. So highways and state aids, this is just our PennDOT mowing contract. It's contractual for the snow removal and the mowing contract. Our other revenue, each year, as much as I don't like it as an accounting guy, there is some revenue that just comes in that you just don't have a line item for. And that is where this gets stuck. This line item drives me crazy. So we actually try to keep it to a minimum. But over the past couple of years, there's been about $7,500 that ends up in it. So we're going to suggest keeping it at $7,500.
Almost never had no problem, extra revenue coming
Yeah,
in.
they don't
You know,
use
I
those.
welcome that opportunity. I'll figure it out.
We don't mind the extra revenue. We just like to be able to put it somewhere within the right line items
Yeah.
within the thing. So that's our your accounting side coming out. You like to tie it to something very specific.
The next thing you'll see is the sale of the township assets. Each year, this pretty much just is scrap metal. Maybe if we have the sale of a vehicle, things along those lines, but we usually don't tend to budget towards it.
There's a lot of political signs they could probably scrap metal at the end of the year. No, seriously, 'cause from everyone putting them out on township property. Those are scrap metal for them.
Another one that an accounting person hates is refund of prior year revenue. Something you never want to budget because refund of prior year expense. Something you never want to budget because hopefully it never happens. This year we have about $3,100 that's going to be projected, and I'm going to say that's the last of it, and it's not going to happen again next year.
Just not gonna happen.
Wait a minute, is this the electrical guy again?
No. This is possibly a duplicate payment, something along those lines that gets booked in 2021. But we catch it and it gets refunded in 2022 after the books close. So you have to book it as a revenue.
It's more of an accounting function of when it comes in than it is anything else.
So overall, this is your proposed revenues. You'll see we're about 10,200,000 compared to our 10,700,000 last year. The $500,000 difference that you see can mostly be attributed to the use of fund balance that we're not going to propose at this point in time until the budget's more concrete. But if you take that out, we're about $160,000 in revenue higher than we were last year. And like I said, when the numbers come in more concrete, we'll be more than happy to make a use of fund balance suggestion to the board.
Thank you, Rich. Sounds like we're in good shape despite the COVID and all things going on. Sounds like we're doing pretty well, so that's good. Appreciate everything you guys have done. Any questions for Rich?
Yeah, really, what are you gonna, what rate or collection are you gonna use?
We're going to use the 97.5 that we always do at this point in time.
What was our,
It's above 99%.
what does that number equate to?
So it's about $55,000 per 1%.
Thank you, Rich.
Can I say, now that we have an idea from the raw census data of what our population growth is, which for those who don't know has 23% increase, give or take. The concern that I have, and this is something that I would like, Stephen, for you to take back and for you and your administrative team to evaluate, is as this township has grown or boomed in population, for better or worse, and I might be incorrect here, it doesn't seem that our police department, our public works, and our township staff has grown consistent to what other size municipalities similarly situated as ours have. And what I think, I know that we have a plan for a police officer this year, and we had that plan for over a period of time to continue to hire more police officers. I would just ask that you have a serious and frank conversation with the other heads of the township and see, do we need to evaluate hiring more people, in these different departments? I understand the massive price tag that comes with it, but we always talk about being the preeminent township and wanting to deliver consistent services to our residents. And what I see is a group of extremely dedicated individuals that are running all over this municipality. And to me, it looks like we need to have more people, whether it's public works that is literally working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in some instances, to the office staff, to even the police. We all need to have a very frank come to Jesus moment about the reality of where we are population wise and what we need to do with this budget for a potential increase in personnel. I think that, however you want to give us that information, I think it's important to have, and take it from there.
I'll look into trying to come up with something that will let you have a comparison to some other municipalities that are our size, that are roughly near a population around us, I wish it was simple. I could say there's 5 municipalities that match us, but I will try to come up with something that will give you some idea. And then I'll also do some comparison per capita of population, per capita of number of employees.
You've already done some forecasting. To that point, you've already done some of that as far as the police department and some of the significant expenses. So we need to add, presented it to us. I don't know exactly what it was, but I mean, they do okay. 2021, 22, I think that was a 5-year projection or whatever it was. So you have done some of what Leonard asked already. I remember the presentation. So it's not like that we're not looking forward and trying to project future. I mean, and the reason you did it is because of the significant growth that we experienced and that we will be experiencing. So some of this work is done. I mean, not saying it's, so we're not at ground zero there as far as looking into the future.
No, you're exactly right. And as I said, I know that we have that plan for the police officers, but I think it's also important that we.
It was more than that.
I think it's important that we look at it across the board. And I think that we need to have a very serious conversation that if we, instead of it being one person a year, maybe we need to have that serious conversation that it's 2 positions a year, so on and so forth, to get us to a functioning number, if you will.
Yeah, I will tell you that, I feel like I'm echoing. I will tell you that, George and I have been having conversations specifically about public works. And mostly not just because of the growth of the population, but really the growth of expectation on that group. It is actually growing more than just the population growth of the impact of that. So, I mean, I do anticipate that I'll be coming back with a request, if not, probably not for 2020, but 2022. Hard to believe that we're saying that, right? But in the future, I do think that if we continue, we talk about adding trails, we talk about planting medians. As we plant those medians, somebody has to take care of those, and it falls upon our public works department to do so. So, we're having those conversations as we make a commitment to plant 1,000 trees over the next 5 years. Those 1,000 trees are going to need to be watered. Those 1,000 trees are going to need to be taken care of. We're looking at that. And then, of course, we've talked about some other issues as well. So we're going to come back with you kind of a holistic approach, hopefully. But we're trying to look at the whole picture of what the whole need is and what the expectation is long term.
Okay, good. Thank you, Rich. All right. Moving on to reports. Mr. Nease, you're going to tell us about the Drexel Lodge mural.
Again, if I can get Rich, if you put some pictures. Oh, I stole the mouse. I don't think I stole it. I think you gave it to me. But anyway, I'd like to show you some pictures of the Drexel Lodge bathrooms on Saturday.
Bathrooms.
Yeah,
not the inside.
if you remember being out to the Drexel Lodge
Go for it,
bathrooms.
yes.
they-
I
I'm
don't think
just,
he means
I
inside.
was
Yeah,
outside
outside.
this, you're in
Yeah.
Huh?
I don't think you mean, I think we all, it sounded like you were saying they were taking us inside the bathroom.
No, I apologize. Let me speak a little differently.
They're on there with fresh. Pictures are attached.
Yeah, so I just wanted to show you, what I love about this project is that this is a project
Great.
that has been done by our elementary schools in the area
Nice.
and the art teachers working together to make this happen. And it's not finished yet. This is the base, and that there'll be a silhouette of the students who've been participating that will be on here, or their portrait as they see themselves. So we're really excited. And what I'm really excited about is some of the stories that are coming out of this. Art teachers that all work in the school system, but don't get to work together. And they've gotten to work together on this project, and they're so excited about having been able to work together as a team, putting this together. And in addition to what this project is doing, which was an unintended consequence or unintended win for them, was that this project has allowed the kids who are going to end up in junior high together to be working together ahead of time, getting to know each other. And so not only do we end up with a fun-looking bathroom at our park, which makes it look a whole lot better than the old one-color bathroom that you saw. This just looks great, but more importantly is it did a great job of building community within the art teachers and also within our students.
Can
And
we
so,
get them at the next meeting, maybe do a little, the students, the art teachers, maybe pass a resolution, give them a little bit of knowledge.
well, they're not done yet. This project is still going. You want to do it before they finish, or you want to wait till they finish?
So John can enjoy it before.
Well,
he-
no,
before he
I
Goes
just,
off the greener
I
pastures.
just want to make, no, I just want to make sure that we do it. And if
Yeah,
it's some of the
absolutely. We
springtime, that's
do
fine.
too. We do
Okay.
too.
There's also,
We'll invite you back.
there were 60 kids, up to 60 kids. Because
Yes.
Tina, Supervisor Robert Lightcap, Russo and I stopped by when they did the sketching.
Yeah, the teachers.
And then I swung by on Saturday and the teacher said that there was about 60 kids. And you hit it spot on. I mean, obviously from having the conversations with individuals from the school board, they were excited at the fact of being able to do something in the community, but also the fact that 4 different elementary schools were all coming together, all different kids who then will be going to Paxton Hollow together. And this is not the only public art project that we have in the hopper there.
Yep.
There's
Are
a,
they up for painting the tree?
No, they're maybe.
I'm dead serious. They're up for painting the tree, we should talk.
But they're also going to be doing our basketball court
Nice.
outside, and that's going to be actually done by I think it's the high school art class. So, we're getting to be the benefit of some really great design and artwork by our kids and by our community. So, and like I said, I think the real win is really the community building that it's doing. In addition to the fact that we get a really fun looking bathroom.
That's good.
So.
And as a personal note, when I was a Girl Scout in Springfield, when I was in middle school, we did a similar project. I know 100 years ago.
you
I know.
can paint wood?
And we had to make our own wood.
Gotta make your own paint, right?
But in any case, we painted a wall on Powell Road and Leamy Avenue. It was a retaining wall. And it was, we still go by it and it was refreshed. But as an adult, I still would drive by and say, I did that and I did that. So it's still a sense of pride.
Sure.
So I think that these kids will take that away
They're looking
when they're
for-
100 years old and they look back.
They're looking for another project, make it seem like more needs to be painted.
Okay.
It's very well done and we really do
Actually, it's great
appreciate
news, yeah. Let's make sure we honor them at the appropriate time,
We will.
whatever that may be. All right, anything else?
That's all I'm.
All right, good, that's all we're gonna let's talk. All right, fund transfer, we still got a lot of agenda here, let's see if we can get through it quick. Item 10.1, this is a transfer of $2,945 from the escrow fund to the stormwater fund. This transfer represents money that was deposited in the escrow fund, but was in fact for a stormwater operation and maintenance agreement. Anybody like to offer a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made by Supervisor Russo, seconded by Supervisor Altieri to approve item 10.1. Any further questions or discussions on the motion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Items 11.1 and 11.2 I will offer as one motion. I had the opportunity before this evening's meeting to review the bills on check register A dated today in the amount of $70,602.73, and the bills on check register B dated today in the amount of $81,104.43. As my motion that we approve those bills. Is there a second? Second. Motion was seconded by Supervisor Partridge. Any questions or discussions on this item from the members of the board? Seeing none, any discussion for members of the general public? Seeing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to new business, item 12.1. As I understand, we are considering approving the forwarding of the historic ordinance to our planning commission and the Delaware County Planning Department for their review. Am I correct, Mr. Nease?
That is correct.
Would anybody like to offer a motion?
So move for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made by Supervisor Partridge, seconded by Supervisor Altieri to approve forwarding our historic ordinance to our planning commission and the Delaware County Planning Department for their review and comments. Any further questions, discussions on the motion?
I just want to say that this is moving along seemingly ever since we had the revisions to it. And this is the normal part of the process. You know, as opposed to, since we're doing a whole new zoning codification, if you will, as opposed to just going out to advertise, we're getting this recommendation from these two bodies before, you know, we go out and do all the rest of that process.
Well said, Mr. Altieri. Yes, this is
Well,
part of the process and no, it's fine. It comprehensively makes sure we're doing the right thing here. So it's good. I'm glad we can move this forward. Any further questions or discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 12.2. This is consider approving a waiver of all permit fees associated with the tree lighting event on December 5th. Supervisor.
This is for, I just want to explain what this is for. The tree lighting event is usually the school, the business association. Well, Gather in the Circle and the business association are going to work on this together. So it's going to be a little different format than what we've seen in the past. So this will start at 5:30. It'll be a little bit longer and I'll have some vendors and it'll be a little bit more than just dancing and dancers and singers. There'll be also food and candy. I think Christopher's will be there. Christopher's Chocolates will be there. So there will some vendors is there as well. So we've asked, the committee has asked, and the business association has asked that we waive any fees associated
I think it's a great idea.
with it. So that's my motion.
Second.
Thank you.
Motion was made by Supervisor Roberts Lycak, seconded by Supervisor Partridge to waive all permit fees associated with the tree lighting event on December 5th. Any further questions or discussions on the motion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 12.3, consider approving the quote to move all the books, shelving, and furniture for the installation of new carpet in the library at a not to exceed cost of $36,000.
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made by Supervisor Partridge, seconded by Supervisor Roberts Lycak. Mr. Neese, as I understand, this was less than we were thinking?
Well, it is less than what I had been in with you
Yes.
last time.
That's what I mean.
It's still more than what we had originally budgeted by about 20,000 between the carpet and the move. But we did save about $5,000 because we're going to move everything in here. And we're going to find a place for us to have all of our meetings in the month of December, assuming that you approve this tonight. We will start that process. We've already actually started the process of trying to find a place to have some of our meetings. But then we'll be able to use this space to store all the books and part of the furniture and that kind of stuff during.
So the board will be meeting somewhere else in December?
So the board will probably be meeting somewhere else in December and potentially the first meeting in January.
Well, the school district.
We are looking at the school district as one of the options. We're trying to have a couple other conversations as well. If we try to do a kind of around the town kind of approach for some of our meetings, we'll do that. And then we'll be working with the committees and really determining whether they have to meet in December, and those that do have to meet, we'll go ahead and have a location for. And those that hopefully that don't have to meet, we'll just postpone it.
All right. Okay, any further questions or discussions? Motion was made and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries unanimously. Last item on the new business, item 12.4, consider approving the amended guarantee agreement between the township and the municipal authority.
Yeah, so if you'll recall, I believe actually during both of the last two meetings, I brought up to you the fact that the Moody's, for part of the rating, had asked that we reevaluate our guarantee. And it was related to a potential of a short-term sellback of bonds if we happen to fault on the bonds. If you remember from our conversation from last time, our bond counsel has made the adjustments to this, and I believe it's attached. It is to the agreement. There was really two areas of minor change, and so what you would be doing tonight is passing this with the intent of two things that were, with stipulation of two things that have to happen. One is the municipal authority has to agree to this as part of the deal, and also the people who have purchased the bonds have to agree to this as part of the deal. I have no reason to believe that either of those two groups would not approve it. The group that's putting their neck out is basically you all, in regards to you're putting the guarantee, you're putting a greater guarantee on it than what was there before. And so for the bondholders, it should be a positive. And for the municipal authority, I can't figure out why they would not want to agree to this if you agree to it. But I would like you to pass it with that contingency that both of them agree, understanding that if both groups don't agree, we're not binding you to anything until that happens.
With that explanation, anybody like to offer a motion on item 12.4?
Sure, I'll offer a motion to approve the amended guarantee agreement between the township and the municipal authority with the contingency that we have agreement from both parties. And that's
There's a second.
Second.
Which was made by Supervisor Partridge, seconded by Supervisor Roberts Lightcap to approve the amended guarantee agreement between the township and the municipal authority. Any further questions or discussions on the motion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We have two ordinances this evening. The first is ordinance 2021-07 for these small wireless facilities. Our solicitor had explained this to us in great detail. I believe what we have here is consistent with the what we're allowed to do under Pennsylvania state law. As I understand it, if we don't act, we will lose some rights under that law. So we almost have to act if we want to be able to control these things. It was advertised. I don't believe we received any written comments or anything like that. I don't see anybody here that wants to make any comments. So I'll entertain a motion to get at least on the table, and then we'll go from there.
okay. Ordinance number 2021-07, an ordinance of the Township of Newtown, Delaware County, amending Chapter 145 Streets and Sidewalks to create a new Article 6, small wireless facilities within the right-of-way intended to effectively regulate pursuant to Pennsylvania's Small Wireless Facilities Deployment Act, small wireless facilities and associated utility poles within the right-of-way. Now, therefore, it is enacted and ordained by the Board of Supervisors of the Township of Newtown, as advertised, sections 1 through 4, enacted and ordained this 11th day of October 2021 by the Board of Supervisors. That's my motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion was made by Supervisor Partridge, seconded by Supervisor Altieri to approve ordinance 2021-07 for small wireless facilities. Are there any further questions or discussions on this motion?
No, I just want to reiterate what you said, Mr. Chairman, that we are not passing this ordinance to start putting up these facilities, but in fact, we're doing it to retain some of the authority and ability for us to have more control over this as sort of the guidance from, or the legislation that came out of Harrisburg. So by doing this, we are actually getting greater authority and control as opposed to us not doing it. Here for everyone watching it.
Yes, that's correct. The state legislature has allowed these facilities to be placed in a public right of way. And if we don't pass this, then we lose all ability to control at least some things with that. So well said. Any further questions or discussions on this motion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next, ordinance 13.2, consider approving ordinance 2021-08, which amends our parking ordinance, sections 165, 11, and 18.
Township of Newtown, Delaware County. Ordinance to amend the code of the township. Delaware Commonwealth. By vehicles and traffic. Article I, section 1.5-11, parking restrictions, and section 1.5-18, parking and storage limitations. Whereas the township code, section 165.11, sets forth vehicle parking and standing restrictions throughout the township. Whereas township code, section 165-18, sets forth parking restrictions for construction vehicles throughout the township. Whereas the Board of Supervisors deems it necessary to further define parking, standing, loading, and unloading Westchester Pike. Whereas the Board of Supervisors deems it necessary to further define construction vehicle parking in residential districts throughout the township. Now, therefore, the township really ordains that section 1 code of the township, chapter 165-11, A, parking and standing restrictions shall be amended to add paragraph 16, south side and north side of Westchester Pike from Route 252 to the border of Edgemont Township. Section 2, the Code of Township Newtown, Chapter 165-11 shall be amended to add paragraph B, no person shall load or unload for any reason except for public transportation on the south side and north side of Westchester Pike from Route 252 to the border of Edgemont Township. Section 3, the Code of Township Newtown, Chapter 165-18, A, shall be amended to add at the end of the paragraph, within 100 feet of the property, it must be removed within 24 hours after the improvement has been completed. Section 4, effective date. This ordinance shall be effective 30 days after the adoption by the Township. Section 5, repealer. All ordinances, resolutions, or parts thereof inconsistent with are repealed, rescinded, canceled, and annulled to the extent of such inconsistency. Enacted by the Board of Supervisors, Township of Newtown, Delaware County, Pennsylvania, this 11th day of October, 2021.
Thank you, Mr. Russo. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Supervisor Russo, seconded by Supervisor Roberts Lightcap to approve ordinance 2021-08, which amends our parking ordinance. For everybody's clarification, this addresses two major things that this board has had a sticking point with. Number one, the unloading of tractor trailers filled with cars in front of our auto dealers. And this ordinance prevents that from occurring on Westchester Pike and empowers our police to be able to issue tickets. And secondly, to address an issue particular to Mr. Russo's near and dear to his heart, the idea of parking construction equipment on our township streets, and amends our parking ordinance to require them to be moved within a certain time period and otherwise have our police the ability to issue tickets. So any further questions or discussions on the motion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Well, now,
Time to
Mrs.
go.
Triton, tell us
Is
something.
that it?
Okay, we have no old business listed. We have no additional business listed. Would Leonard, I mean, any board member like to make a comment? He's done. All right, good. Any public comment? Oh, good. All right, he has no comments. Great. Do any members of the general public have any comments? No, seeing none. We are adjourned. Our next meeting is Monday, October 25th in this building. Please be happy and safe between then and now. Thanks for coming.